Why it would suck to wake up as an Idoneth Deepkin. The dark truth beneath the waves. Welcome to Realm Laura Mops. Imagine waking up as an Idoneth Deepkin. Think it's all shimmering waves, elegant elven grace, and riding sea creatures through glittering undersea kingdoms. Well, let's talk about why it would suck to wake up as one of the ocean's darkest secrets. Because let's be honest, for all the luminous blue glow, for all the elegant martial forms, the Idoneth Deepkin live lives shadowed by tragedy, fear, and a secret so grim it would chill even Nagash's icy bones. So buckle in, we're going on a dive. And not the kind you take on a sun-drenched coral reef. No, we're plunging into the deepest abyss of mortal fate and elven despair. Let's begin where all tragedies begin. At the beginning, you're born an elf, right? Which in most universes would be a pretty sweet deal. You'd be graceful, ageless, luminous-eyed, a being of near-perfect form and innate magic. Your ancestors would be towering mythic figures whose deeds are sung in ballads from one end of the realms to the other. But for the Idoneth, your story starts with Teclis. Remember Teclis, tall, radiant, ridiculously powerful, the shining beacon of elven wisdom. Teclis, the mage god who once stood against chaos alongside the other gods during the forging of the mortal realms. After the fall of the world that was, the Aelven pantheon, the ones who survived anyway, found themselves in a galaxy-sized cosmic fix. Because they'd realized that Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess, had devoured millions of Aelven souls during the end times. Those souls were gone, or not entirely. See, Slaanesh didn't quite finish digesting them. Trapped in the Dark Prince's belly were countless elven spirits screaming in silent torment. So the surviving elven gods, Tyrion, Teclis, Malerion, Marathi, they hatched a plan. They captured Slaanesh, bound the Chaos God in chains of divine making, and began extracting those lost souls, one excruciating sliver at a time. It was salvation, it was vengeance, it was hope, or so they thought. Or so they thought. His dream was to forge the perfect new Aelf race, a people untainted by chaos, a people to repopulate the mortal realms with Aelven light. He pulled souls from Slaanesh, wove them into bodies, poured his magic into sculpting a new civilization. These newborn elves opened their eyes, drew breath, and seemed perfect. At first. Some were born utterly empty, blank slates with no spark behind their eyes. Others held horrifying darkness inside, glimpses of the torment they'd suffered in Slaanesh's belly. Teclis, the master of light and knowledge, stared at his creations and saw a yawning abyss. An entire race tainted by the very trauma of chaos. So Teclis tried to fix them. He experimented, tweaking the soul-weaving process. He pushed his magic further, desperate to cleanse them of lingering darkness. But the more he tried, the clearer it became. These elves could never be pure. They carried a stain that even divine magic couldn't scrub away. And then came the moment that shattered everything. Teclis gathered the Idoneth, lifted his staff, and unleashed a burst of searing light meant to obliterate the corruption once and for all. Instead, he nearly annihilated them. The Idoneth screamed, their bodies burning with inner fire. Entire enclaves were incinerated, souls ripped apart by Teclis's fury. Those who survived fled. They plunged into the oceans deeper than sunlight could reach and vanished from the sight of gods and mortals alike. Teclis stood alone on the shore, watching as his dreams sank beneath the waves. Imagine that! You're born into existence by a god who instantly decides you're a failure and then tries to erase you. If you ever wanted a definition of existential whiplash, that's it. So the Idoneth Deepkin were born of betrayal and fear. From that moment on, they vowed two things. They would survive, no matter the cost. And they would never, ever let anyone discover what they truly were. In the darkness of the ocean depths, they built hidden kingdoms. Vast cities of coral, shell, and shimmering ether quartz. Spiraling towers that glowed with bioluminescence. Labyrinthine halls of pale pearl and sharp obsidian. The Idoneth became masters of the sea, shaping tides and currents, cloaking entire cities from mortal eyes. Because the Idoneth faced a new horror, most of their children were born without true souls. The trauma of Slaanesh had left their essence so wounded that the spark of life flickered out before it could fully take hold. Thus emerged the great secret of the Idoneth, soul thieving. They learned how to tear souls from living mortals. Human fishermen, coastal villagers, sailors caught in storms, all vanished without a trace, dragged into the depths to have their spirits ripped away. These stolen souls were then grafted into the Namati, the soulless majority of Idoneth society. A grim, fragile solution to keep their people alive. This is where your life as an Idoneth Deepkin begins. You wake each day surrounded by beauty. Pearlescent walls glisten with shimmering color. Fish of impossible shapes glide through open arches. The cities echo with haunting songs played on shell instruments whose tones drift like the tides. But beneath the loveliness lies an undercurrent of dread. Because your society has one rule above all others, secrecy. No one must know you exist. No one must suspect your raids on the surface. No one must discover the truth about your stolen souls. The Idoneth live like ghosts, slipping through shadows, erasing memories, leaving only silence where entire villages once stood. Even other elves, the daughters of Kaini, the Lumineth realm lords, know only fragments, whispers of a lost people beneath the waves. It's easy to think of the Idoneth as villains, soul thieves, monsters. But step into their world and you'll see the desperation behind every blade, the sorrow behind every mask. Because if they don't steal souls, they die out. And so your civilization hides in gloom-lit cities, ruled by councils of Isharan seers and mysterious nobles. You pray that Teclis never finds you again. You pray that the gods of order continue to look the other way. You pray that the darkness lurking in your brethren's eyes doesn't burst forth into chaos. And deep in the black waters, ancient things stir, things older than even your race. Leviathans the size of fortresses lurking in deep trenches, shapeless monstrosities prowling the ocean floor. The Idoneth know how thin the barrier is between their fragile secrecy and utter annihilation. Every Idoneth child grows up learning the same lessons. Trust no surface dweller. Show no mercy if discovered. Never reveal the truth of your soul. Imagine carrying that weight from the moment you draw your first breath. It's no wonder the Idoneth move like wraiths through the mortal realms, appearing only to strike, then vanishing again into midnight waters. And all of this began because Teclis, in his boundless arrogance, tried to create the perfect elf. Instead, he created a people who must live in secrecy, who survive by stealing the essence of others, who worship a forgotten god of the depths, and who know that no matter how brightly their cities shine, they remain creatures of shadows. Welcome to your life as an Idoneth Deepkin. And that is just the beginning. So you've made it through your first taste of Idoneth history. You've survived your birth as an elf deemed a cosmic failure, fled into the depths and found refuge in cities hidden from mortal eyes. Now, let's talk about the society you've landed in. Because the Idoneth Deepkin didn't just vanish into the ocean and call it a day. They built a civilization, an entire world beneath the waves. But before you get too dazzled by coral towers and luminous schools of fish darting through glimmering halls, you should know this. Everything in Idoneth society is built on one thing: secrecy. Your entire civilization exists behind a veil. Above the surface, people might tell stories about sea spirits or monstrous sea raiders, but they never know the truth. They never suspect that an entire nation of elves dwells below, watching, waiting, ready to snatch their souls if the balance tips too far. That secrecy shapes everything in Idoneth life, from how you're raised, to how you fight, to how you even think. First, let's talk about how the Deepkin are organized. Your people are divided into separate enclaves. Think of these as undersea city-states, each with its own culture, traditions, and sometimes even its own interpretation of how best to ensure the survival of your race. There's Ionrak, for instance. The first enclave. The thinkers, the strategists, the ones who consider themselves the spiritual heart of the Deepkin. If you're from Ionrak, you'll likely spend a lot of your life in politics, overseeing councils, or conducting soul rituals to keep the Namati alive. Ionrak prides itself on wisdom and caution, but even among their ranks, desperation sometimes festers. Then there's Fwethan. Oh, Fwethan. If you're from Fwethan, you probably solve problems with a blade, or with a snarling Fangmora eel. Fwethan is hot-blooded, aggressive, and holds a certain seething rage against the surface world. Some say Fwethan raids not only for survival, but for the sheer thrill of vengeance against those who dwell in the sunlit lands. Briondar, meanwhile, is the enclave of secrets. They're the masters of stealth, capable of shrouding entire cities in magical illusions that even other Idoneth struggle to pierce. They prefer to operate unseen, their raids swift and utterly silent. Briumdar is the reason so many mortal sailors swear they saw ghostly figures rising from the waves, only for the memory to fade like salt on the breeze. And these are just the most famous enclaves. There are others, scattered across the seas of every mortal realm, each with unique customs, dialects, and ways of interpreting the burdens of their existence. But no matter where you're born, your place in society hinges on one terrifying truth, whether you were born with a soul or without one. Because that's the dark divide in Idoneth life. The lucky few born with intact souls become the Achilleans or Isharan. The Achilleans are your warrior aristocracy, the knightly class, if you will. They ride Fangmora eels into battle, wielding polearms of shimmering ether quartz. They're proud, deadly, and trained from childhood to master both martial combat and the intricacies of the tides. The Isharan, meanwhile, are your mystics, priests, soul keepers, and ritual specialists. They're the ones who maintain the delicate magic that shields your enclaves from detection. They're the record keepers, the soul ledgers, the seers who calculate how many mortal souls must be harvested this season to keep the Namati alive. Isharan are mysterious, withdrawn, and carry a terrible burden, for they know the grim mathematics behind your survival. But the majority of your people, they're the Namati. Imagine this, you're born into the Deepkin world, but when your eyes open, there's no spark inside. Your mind is a blank canvas. You can breathe, you can move, but there's nothing deeper, no sense of self, no dreams, no memory of who you are. That's what it means to be born a Namarti. The Namarti are the soulless underclass. Without intervention, they'd wither away, unable to sustain their life essence. So the Isharan devised a horrifying solution. They steal souls from mortals and graft them into the Namati bodies. The result? The Namati awaken. They become functional, but even then they remain incomplete. Their souls flicker like candle flames in a storm. Many suffer sudden collapses. Others fall into fugued states, staring blankly into the dark waters for hours. They're prone to emotional extremes. Raging fury one moment, paralyzing sorrow the next. And the cruelest part? The Namati know they're broken. They remember flashes of their old lives. Brief glimpses of sunlit fields, families, laughter, all torn away, leaving them adrift in silence. Namati live short, brutal lives. They're the laborers, the workers, and, on the battlefield, the expendable infantry. The Deepkin arm them with simple weapons and send them forth to die in place of the Achilleans. It's efficient, it's necessary, and it's monstrous. But to the Idoneth, there's no alternative. If they don't harvest souls, the Namati die, and if the Namati die, so does the future of the Deepkin race. So there you are, navigating your society. Maybe you're an Achillean prince, gleaming in lacquered armor, riding a Fangmora eel into battle. Or maybe you're a Namati, your borrowed soul flickering, gripping your cruel-bladed glaive as your superiors steer you towards certain death. And over it all, watching from coral balconies, stand the Isharan priests. Their eyes shine with a cold light. They calculate survival in ledgers of souls. They decide how many mortal villages must vanish into the depths to sustain your people. It's a chilling kind of hierarchy, and every Deepkin, no matter how high or low, is a prisoner of the same cosmic truth. You're a child of a god's mistake. You've heard it whispered among your kin, in hushed voices behind pearl columns. The question that haunts every Deepkin heart: why did Teclis abandon us? For all their martial splendor and bioluminescent cities, the Idoneth live with a creeping certainty that they're fundamentally wrong, that they're cosmic errors, that even the gods see them as tainted. And nowhere does that fear burn hotter than in the Namati. Because while the Achilleans wield weapons forged of shimmering magic, while the Isharan command the tides themselves, the Namati live each moment under the shadow of oblivion. They don't age normally. The grafted souls inside them eventually fade. When that happens, Namati fall into comas, or worse, violent spasms. Some disintegrate into drifting particles of light. Namati funerals are silent affairs. Their bodies are placed in coral tombs, guarded by soul wardens who murmur quiet prayers to gods the Idoneth barely admit exist. And always there's the same question: whose soul was that? Because the Idoneth never forget where those souls come from. They remember the raids, the terrified screams of mortals dragged from seaside villages, the flickering lights as Isharan wizards siphon living essence into crystal foils. Every soul inside a Namati once belonged to someone who screamed as they drowned. It's the ugliest part of your civilization, and you're forced to live with it every single day. Imagine walking through your enclave's corridors, walls gleaming like mother of pearl, passing Namati laborers who stare at you with hollow eyes. You know that beneath each stare is a soul that might once have belonged to a farmer, a fisherman, a child. You want to believe the greater good justifies the horror, but deep down, you know, it's a lie you tell yourself to sleep at night. There's a reason the Deepkin worship in secret. A reason they whisper prayers to Maflan, god of the sea and lost souls. Maflan, who was slain during the end times, and who some believe watches over the lost and the forgotten. Because your people feel lost too, and yet, for all this darkness, the Idoneth cling to beauty. Their cities are breathtaking. Carved coral archways shimmer in rainbow colors. Leviatons, massive sea turtles covered in armor, and coral turrets drift lazily through great canals. Fangmora, eels coil around towering spires, their scales glittering like liquid jewels. Undersea gardens bloom with luminescent plants. Soft music ripples through the water, played on instruments of shell and bone. The Idoneth may be haunted, but they refuse to abandon art, song, and craftsmanship. It's one of the great contradictions of your existence, a people drowning in sorrow who create things of stunning beauty. Yet even that beauty is tainted by secrecy, because the Deepkin know that if mortals discover the truth, they'd become targets. Armies would march, cities would burn. The Idoneth would be hunted to extinction. So you live behind illusions, you fight your wars in silence, you steal what you need and vanish before dawn. And every time you stare into Namati's eyes, you see the ultimate proof that the Idoneth Deepkin exist in a perpetual moral grey. You're not purely villains, but you're not heroes either, you're survivors. And survival has its price, so now you've learned how the Idoneth live, you've glimpsed their shining cities hidden in the abyss. You've felt the weight of secrets pressing down on every soul, and seen how their society divides the fortunate Achilleans from the tragic Namati. But if you really want to understand what it means to wake up as an Idoneth Deepkin, you have to understand the single, inescapable reality at the center of your existence, the harvest of souls. Because if you strip away the coral towers, the elegant spears, the shimmering eels, what lies at the heart of Idoneth life is theft. The Idoneth Deepkin are soul thieves, not because they're cruel for the sake of cruelty, not because they worship dark gods or revel in bloodshed like the daughters of Kaini. They steal souls for one reason only: survival. You see, the Namati, the soulless majority of your people, cannot live without a spark to sustain them. Their bodies function, but without a soul to anchor them, they begin to fade. It starts slowly, a blank stare, a few hours where they can't remember who they are. Then the body begins to weaken, the limbs trembling, the eyes glazing over. Eventually, they simply collapse, dissolving into particles of drifting light, leaving nothing behind but sorrow and guilt. The Isharan calculated long ago that without constant infusions of new souls, the Namati would perish completely within a few generations. And so the Idoneth faced a stark choice: steal souls from mortals or vanish from existence. So let's imagine for a moment that you're an Achillean prince, or an Isharan soulrender, or even a simple Namati foot soldier given a spear and orders to obey. You're preparing for a raid. It's not like a normal war. It's not a siege with battering rams and screaming warriors hurling themselves against fortress walls. An Idoneth raid is something else entirely, a ballet of silence and shadows performed beneath the cover of crashing waves. First, the Isharan soul scryers study the tides. They consult shimmering charts made of translucent membranes, etched with runes that shift and twist under arcane light. They track the phases of the moon, the movement of currents, and even subtle magical energies radiating from coastal settlements. Every factor is weighed, because the Idoneth must ensure that when they strike, there will be no witnesses left to tell the tale. Then come the scouts. Silent Achillean patrols ride Fangmora eels close to shore, their sleek mounts gliding through the surf with barely a ripple. They watch from the darkness, eyes reflecting faint blue bioluminescence. They memorize the layout of villages, mark patrol patterns, count how many mortals live there. And once the perfect moment arrives, under cover of darkness or concealed by raging storms summoned by Isharan magic, the raid begins. If you're part of the raiding force, your blood is singing with tension. You ride creatures that shouldn't exist outside of nightmares: massive eels with needle-like teeth, sharks as large as horses, turtles the size of city gates. The magic of your enclave wraps you in silence. Even the crash of waves fades away as you approach the shore. And then, with a signal, a subtle flicker of the soul render's blade, you strike. Achillean cavalry surges forward on their eels, leaping over piers and seawalls. Namarti pour out of the surf, their eyes glowing faintly as they rush mortal defenders. The Asharan weave illusions, cloaking your warriors in fog and false shapes. To the terrified humans, it's as if the ocean itself has risen to devour them. And always, the goal is the same, to take the souls you need and vanish before anyone can organize resistance. No conquest, no territory gained. Just lightning-fast terror, followed by absolute silence. It's horrifying in its efficiency, and if you're an Idoneth Deepkin, you've grown up hearing whispered tales of the raids. Older warriors speak of blood washing back into the sea, leaving beaches littered with empty husks whose eyes are still wide with fear. They talk of entire fishing villages simply vanishing overnight, leaving behind only salt-slicked buildings and drifting nets. But the Idoneth don't talk about it publicly. There are no victory parades, no songs celebrating the harvest, because every soul taken comes with a price guilt that gnaws at your mind in the quiet hours. You might tell yourself it's necessary, that it's either them or you. But late at night, drifting through coral streets lit by pale lanterns, you remember the faces of the mortals you dragged into the waves. Because they never go quietly, mortal souls don't want to be torn from their bodies. They fight, even as the soul renders perform their grim rituals, slicing through spiritual bonds with blades of ether quartz forged specifically for this dark purpose. The victims' screams echo through the water, muffled yet unmistakable. Some beg, some curse your name. And some simply stare, eyes wide and uncomprehending, as their essence is ripped away. If you're the one holding the knife or the spear, you can feel that life slipping through your hands, a flicker of warmth, a final shiver. Then it's gone. Bottled. Stored. Ready to be implanted into a waiting Namarti body. And then the raid is over. The Deepkin vanish back beneath the waves, leaving no trace. And when mortals come looking for answers, all they find are empty villages and the taste of salt on the wind. And that's how you survive as an Idoneth Deepkin. By stealing the very essence of others. It's a monstrous thing, but it's also the only way your people can continue to exist, because no matter how beautiful your cities may be, or how graceful your magic, the Idoneth know that the clock is always ticking. The Namarti souls will eventually fade. More will be needed. And so the cycle continues, century after century with no end in sight. It's the cruelest irony of all, because the Idoneth were born from the desire to create perfect AoS, free from chaos. Instead, you've become thieves of the one thing chaos itself covets most, souls. Souls. But the raids aren't the only secret weapon the Idoneth possess. Because while the soul harvest defines your survival, there's another side to your people that mortals rarely glimpse. A side filled with wonder, brilliance, and terrifying power. Let's talk about your magic and technology. If you're an Idoneth, your entire world is steeped in sorcery. From the day you're born, the ocean itself whispers with power. The Deepkin don't just live underwater, they shape it to their will. They command the tides. Literally, their magic can summon massive surges to cover coastal cities in towering walls of water, or calm the sea until it's smooth as glass, hiding entire armies beneath its surface. The tides aren't just an environmental feature for the Idoneth, they're part of your very doctrine of war. Achillean commanders plan battles around the phases of the tides. During the high tide, the Idoneth strike with overwhelming force, protected by swirling currents that slow enemy blades. During the ebb tide, they fade away into shadow, vanishing from mortal sight. It's not random, it's ritual. Every Deepkin warrior learns the rhythms of the ocean as intimately as they learn how to breathe. The Isharan are your magical elite. They're the priests, seers, and soul mages of your people. They weave complex illusions so perfect that entire armies can march into battle unseen. They craft psychic barriers that block even the probing minds of chaos sorcerers. And when they need to, they can call forth the wrath of the sea itself. Picture this, a mortal army stands ready on a sunlit beach, shields locked, spears bristling, then, out of nowhere, the ocean explodes upward. A towering wave crashes over the defenders, carrying with it shapes that glimmer and writhe. Out of the foam charge Idoneth cavalry riding Fangmora eels, their weapons glowing with lethal blue light. In a matter of heartbeats, the mortal army is swept away, leaving only silence and rolling surf. That's Idoneth magic, but it goes deeper than just war. The entire architecture of your cities depends on magical engineering. Coral towers are sculpted through arcane manipulation, grown into perfect spirals that shine like precious gemstones. Huge tunnels of hardened water allow citizens to swim swiftly between distant districts. Your craftsmen shape ether quartz, a shimmering mineral harvested from deep trenches to forge weapons, armor, and even musical instruments. Ether quartz holds magical energy like a reservoir. It glows with an inner light, pulsing softly as spells ripple through it. If you're an Isharan artificer, you might spend years carving delicate runes into a single sliver of ether quartz, infusing it with spells that can either shield an entire enclave from scrying or vaporize a Leviathan-sized target in one blast. Speaking of Leviathans, let's talk about the living weapons of the Idoneth. Because the Deepkin don't just rely on magic, they tame the monstrous creatures of the ocean and turn them into engines of war. Leviathans are colossal sea turtles. Their shells armored in coral plating, their limbs powerful enough to churn the ocean into foam. Upon their backs are mounted entire fortresses, battlements bristling with harpoons, coral cannons, and Isharan seers who hurl bolts of magical energy at the enemy. A single Leviathan can plow through enemy lines like a living battering ram, its snapping jaws crushing siege engines, its armored shell deflecting cannon fire. Then there are the Alopexes. Imagine a shark the size of a horse. Now give it razor-sharp fins edged with ether quartz, a savage glint in its eyes, and armor plating fused to its scales. Alopexes are the shock cavalry of the Deepkin, surging through enemy formations with unstoppable momentum. Even seasoned, storm-cast Eternals have been torn to pieces by an Alopex's jaws. And then, there's the Eidolons. No one knows quite what an Eidolon truly is. Some say they're manifestations of Mathlan, fragments of divine power given form. Others claim they're semi-ethereal constructs woven from the collective will of the Deepkin. Whatever the truth, an Eidolon is a figure of haunting majesty, towering, draped in robes of flowing water, bearing weapons shaped from living coral and seething magic. There are two faces to the Eidolon, the aspect of the storm, who strides into battle like a living tidal wave, and the aspect of the sea, who sings songs that calm or destroy with equal ease. An Eidolon can reshape the battlefield simply by existing. Waves crash in its wake. Enemies falter beneath its gaze. To witness one is to glimpse the raw, terrifying power the Deepkin hold in reserve. All of this, Leviathans, Alopexes, Eidolons, ether quartz, tidal magic, it's dazzling. And yet, for the Idoneth Deepkin, it's also a mask. Because beneath every spell, every beast, every glittering artifact, lies the same desperate truth. You're fighting a losing battle against extinction. No matter how powerful your weapons, the Namati continue to fade. No matter how beautiful your cities, you remain outcasts, living in secrecy. Your greatest achievements in magic and technology are ultimately just tools to prolong a fate you can't escape. You might be riding an armored shark into battle, but you'll still wake up at night haunted by the faces of the souls your people stole to stay alive. And that's the tragedy of Idoneth magic. It's magnificent, it's breathtaking, but it's all built on a foundation of theft and secrecy. So yeah, welcome to life as an Idoneth Deepkin, where your every triumph tastes faintly of salt and sorrow. And that's the way it has to be, because the ocean gives and it takes away. So by now you've seen what lurks beneath the surface of Idoneth society. You've learned the truth about soul raids, shimmering magic, and monsters turned into living war machines. But if you truly want to know what it's like to wake up as an Idoneth Deepkin, you have to understand the thing that defines so much of your existence: war. Because for the Idoneth, war is not merely survival, it's the ultimate tool of secrecy. Let's imagine for a moment that you're born into the Achillean caste. Congratulations, you're one of the lucky few born with a soul strong enough to carry the burden of consciousness. You are the warrior nobility of the Deepkin, trained from the moment you can hold a blade. Your childhood is not filled with gentle games or carefree swimming through coral groves. From your earliest memories, your life is a litany of discipline, precision, and relentless combat drills. You learn to swim in perfect silence, to maneuver through currents without stirring a single ripple. You learn the unique art of undersea warfare, how to strike from darkness, retreat with the tide, and vanish before an enemy knows you were there. Your teachers are veterans, warriors with eyes as hard as mother of pearl, whose scales glint under the glow of luminous lanterns. They drill you until your limbs ache and your gills burn. They push you to master every weapon the Deepkin wield, from the double-bladed glaives of the infantry to the heavy tridents used from the backs of war mounts. And speaking of mounts, one day you meet your partner, the Fangmora eel, a creature as beautiful as it is deadly. Its body is long, muscular, rippling with power. Its scales shimmer like quicksilver. Its jaws bristle with needle-sharp teeth capable of tearing through steel. You are paired with a Fangmora when you're still young enough that its size terrifies you. And your task is to bond with it, to earn its trust, and to become one creature in battle. That's no easy task, because Fangmora eels are predators. They do not obey out of loyalty. They obey because you've proven yourself worthy. You train for years, learning how to read the subtle flicker of its fins, the tension in its coils, the way its pupils dilate before it strikes. You feed it, you heal its wounds, you bleed alongside it in mock battles until the creature learns that you are its kin. Once that bond is forged, you and your Fangmora become a living weapon. You ride the eel into battle, the creature twisting and lunging with impossible speed. You wield a two-handed glaive, slicing through enemy ranks as your eel whips around you, its teeth snapping closed on anything foolish enough to get too close. There's nothing in the mortal realms quite like Achillean cavalry. Your tactics are surgical. You don't hold lines, you don't dig trenches. You strike like lightning, carving open enemy formations before vanishing back into the surf. Mortals speak of the Idoneth as ghosts, precisely because of warriors like you, here one moment, gone the next, leaving behind only blood swirling in the tide. But don't imagine that being an Achillean means you're safe from fear, because every time you charge into battle, you know the enemy might be far worse than you've ever trained for. You might be fighting chaos warriors twice your size, who laugh off your spear thrusts as if you were tickling them. You might find yourself facing creatures whose bodies re-knit around your blades. Or worse, enemies who try to claw into your mind, seeking to plant seeds of corruption. You're taught from the beginning to fear chaos above all else. Not just because of its armies, but because its very essence can poison your people's already fragile souls. So even as you whirl your glaive in flawless martial patterns, part of you knows that a single wound from the wrong blade could doom your entire enclave. And that's just the Achilleans. If you're born into the Namati class, your experience of war is different. You still fight, you're still taught to wield blades, spears, and nets. But there's no prestige in it for you. You're not a noble cavalry rider on a glimmering eel. You're infantry cannon fodder. Namati warriors march in tightly packed formations, shoulder to shoulder, wielding long-bladed glaives designed to slice through mortal ranks. In battle, they move as one. Their faces are hidden behind simple masks, their eyes glowing faintly as their borrowed souls burn like guttering candles. And yet, when the Namati fight, it's with terrifying ferocity, because they know they're living on borrowed time. They fight like creatures who have nothing left to lose. If you're a Namati, you might not understand why you're so angry, why the mere sight of an enemy makes you tremble with rage. But somewhere deep inside you, the soul that was stolen from the surface remembers what was taken. In the chaos of battle, some Namati scream names no one recognizes, echoes of past lives they can't quite recall. Others fall silent, as if their souls slip away mid-swing. And every Achillean or Isharan knows that deploying the Namati means paying a price. Because every Namati death is another soul lost, another irreplaceable spark flickering out. But for all these differences, there's one thing that unites the Deepkin in war: the tides. Idoneth warfare revolves entirely around the ebb and flow of the ocean. Their tactics are built into cycles. First, the low tide. During the low tide, the Deepkin approach silently. They gather their forces under veils of magic. They strike at isolated outposts, sabotage supply lines, and assassinate enemy scouts. It's not about open combat, it's about sowing confusion and fear. Then comes the flood tide. This is when the Deepkin surge forward in coordinated attacks. The Achilleans ride their eels straight into enemy ranks. The Vadans charge across the battlefield, their armored shells deflecting even cannon fire. Namati surge behind them, glaives flashing in perfect unison. During the flood tide, the Idoneth strike with the full weight of their fury. This is the apex of Idoneth battle doctrine. During high tide, the Deepkin become almost unstoppable. Magical barriers shield them from harm. The ocean itself seems to protect them. Enemy blows are slowed as if moving through thick water. The Deepkin glide effortlessly, cutting through enemy formations while appearing untouchable. It's during the high tide that the Deepkin claim the most souls. This is the peak of their lethal dance, the moment they harvest life for the survival of their people. Finally, there's the ebb tide. Once their goals are achieved, or when battle turns against them, the Deepkin vanish. They retreat beneath the waves, leaving enemies bewildered. It's said that fighting the Idoneth feels like fighting a dream. One moment you're engulfed in violence, The next, the ocean is calm again, as if nothing ever happened. These tides are more than just strategy. They're woven into the very culture of your people. Songs are written about the rhythm of the tide. Children are taught the phases as part of their earliest education. Even in civilian life, everything from festivals to soul rituals follows the cadence of the sea. Because for the Idoneth, the ocean isn't just a home, it's a shield, a weapon, and a silent conspirator in all they do. But for all your martial prowess, you're still part of a world filled with other empires. And no matter how carefully the Deepkin hide, eventually your paths cross with other factions. Let's talk about what it's like to live in a galaxy filled with neighbors who'd either kill you or condemn you if they learned your secrets. Start with the Stormcast Eternals. On the surface, you'd think the Stormcast and the Idoneth would be natural allies. Both serve order. Both fight against chaos. Both seek to protect civilization. But the Stormcast are creatures of Sigmar, and Sigmar's vision of order leaves little room for secrecy or moral compromise. When the Stormcast first encountered the Idoneth, it was cautiously, elves who fought chaos, who seemed to be rescuing mortals from destruction. That sounded good. But then came the truth. The Stormcast learned about the soul raids. They witnessed entire towns wiped off the map with no survivors. They saw the evidence of souls siphoned away to sustain the Deepkin. For the Stormcast, this was unforgivable. They are warriors forged from stolen souls themselves. They understand, better than anyone, how precious a soul truly is. So to them, the Idoneth are monsters hiding beneath noble masks. And so what could have been an alliance has become an uneasy hostility. Some Stormcast will still fight alongside the Deepkin if the threat of chaos is dire enough. But trust is thin as sea foam, and any battle between them can turn lethal if the Idoneth let their intentions slip. Then there are the other Elfin nations. Morathi's Daughters of Cain view the Idoneth with suspicion and disgust. To Morathi, any rival who siphons power from mortal souls is competition and a dangerous threat. She'd love nothing more than to twist the Idoneth to her purposes or eradicate them if they refuse. The Lumineth Realm Lords? Oh, that's an awkward relationship. Teclis, their god king, is the very being who tried to erase the Idoneth from existence. His followers remember that history well. The Lumineth see the Deepkin as a tragic mistake, an echo of elven potential gone horribly wrong. Some pity them, some fear them. But trust them? Not likely. When Lumineth and Idoneth armies find themselves fighting side by side, the tension is thick enough to choke on. Every polite bow and graceful gesture hides 1,000 unspoken words. To them, the Idoneth are nightmares. Most humans barely know they exist. Those who do speak of sea devils or ghost elves who come in the night and leave entire coastal settlements empty. Coastal cities train watchmen to keep an eye on the sea. Fishermen tell tales of ships that vanish without a trace. The cities of Sigmar might hire elven mercenaries, even Idoneth in disguise, but they'd turn on them in a heartbeat if they discovered the truth about the soul raids. Among chaos factions, reactions to the Idoneth vary wildly. Some see them as rivals for mortal souls. Others, like Slaanesh's worshippers, harbor a bizarre fascination with the Deepkin's suffering. After all, the Idoneth's entire existence is bound to Slaanesh's appetite. Chaos cults dream of dragging the Deepkin back into the Dark Prince's embrace to finish what was started so long ago. And don't forget the Skaven. If there's any race that terrifies the Idoneth almost as much as chaos, it's the Skaven. Because the Skaven thrive on secrets, they burrow tunnels under oceans, build devices to pierce illusions, and sniff out even the most hidden enclaves. Skaven warlords dream of flooding Idoneth cities, stealing Aether Quartz, or capturing Leviatons for their own monstrous schemes. They'd sell that information to the highest bidder, or worse, use it as blackmail to extract endless tribute. So if you're an Idoneth Deepkin, every alliance, every negotiation, every silent nod shared between armies on a battlefield is laced with risk. Because no matter how noble your intentions might be, the world will never forget that you survive by stealing the very thing that makes mortals human. Their souls. So you fight. Because if it does, the ocean won't be deep enough to hide your secrets forever. So far, you've learned that life as an Idoneth Deepkin is a constant dance between secrets and survival. You've witnessed the grim mechanics of soul raids, the brilliance of tidal warfare, and the precarious balance of alliances that could collapse at the first sign of truth. But to truly understand what it means to wake up as an Idoneth Deepkin, you have to swim even deeper, beyond the weapons, beyond the politics. into the currents of belief, philosophy, and culture that bind this people together, no matter how fractured they might seem from the outside. Because here's the thing about the Idoneth. Even though they live surrounded by silence and secrecy, they have not entirely forgotten how to dream. Let's begin with the question of faith. Ask any mortal on the surface about Idoneth religion, and they'd likely stare blankly. Few even know the Idoneth exist. Those who do might guess that these sea elves worship ocean gods or strange leviathans lurking in trenches, and they'd be right, partly. Because while the Idoneth are certainly creatures of the sea, their faith is wound tight around a figure most mortals barely remember: Mathlan. Mathlan, god of the sea and lost souls. In the age of myth, Mathlan was revered as a guardian of sailors, fishermen, and all those who plied the oceans. He was a god of mystery, known to be as calm as a glassy sea or as wrathful as a tidal wave. Mortals prayed to him for safe voyages, offered pearls and fish in exchange for mercy from storms. But when the world that was died and chaos devoured reality, Mathlan fell silent. Some say he died entirely. Others believe he lingers, wounded and diminished, hidden in the darkest depths. For the Idoneth, Mathlan remains an object of desperate devotion. Because who else would understand them? Who else dwells in silence, shunned by the surface, forgotten by the gods of light? Among the Idoneth, Mathlan's name is not spoken lightly. His images are carved into coral walls in secret chapels, often hidden behind illusions so even fellow Deepkin might walk past without noticing. His iconography is subtle: a curling wave, a stylized fish, a silver spear. But in moments of fear, in the quiet hours when guilt threatens to crush your chest, the Idoneth whisper prayers to Mathlan. They beg him to forgive the blood they spill, to keep their enclaves hidden, to watch over the Namati whose souls burn so faintly. And sometimes, just sometimes, they pray for something else entirely, that Mathlan might one day rise again and lead them back into the light. Yet for all this quiet faith, the Idoneth keep religion deeply private. Open worship is rare. There are no grand temples, no public ceremonies. Everything is hidden, like everything else in Idoneth life, because worshipping Mathlan is a reminder of two unbearable truths. First, that the Idoneth are exiles, cut off from the divine order of the mortal realms, and second, that even the gods can abandon you. But faith alone doesn't sustain a civilization. There's another current flowing through Idoneth society: philosophy. Imagine growing up knowing you are fundamentally flawed, that the god who created you tried to erase you from existence, that your survival demands the theft of others' souls. That knowledge shapes every facet of your thinking. For the Idoneth, the dominant philosophy is simple: survival above all else. You don't talk about morality in the same way mortals on the surface do. Right and wrong become luxuries you can't afford. The guiding principle is secrecy, because secrecy ensures survival. If mortals discover your existence and the truth about your soul raids, the retaliation would be swift and merciless. So as an Idoneth, you learn to compartmentalize. You might attend an elegant recital where shell instruments create haunting music that sounds like the shifting tide. You might gaze at paintings that glow with ethereal light, depicting battles fought in total silence beneath crushing waves. But all the while, in the back of your mind, you know that your people are planning the next raid, that someone's soul will soon be ripped from their body to sustain the Namati, and you justify it by reminding yourself, it's them or us. Yet for all this darkness, the Idoneth refuse to abandon beauty. Art flourishes in your cities. Coral sculptures twist and bloom in hypnotic patterns. Murals shimmer on pearl walls, painted in pigments harvested from bioluminescent creatures. Songs drift through water like currents, played on instruments fashioned from conch shells, each note warbling and echoing in ways mortal ears can barely comprehend. There's a melancholy to Idoneth art, a sense of something half-remembered, like sunlight glimpsed through waves. Because everything your people create is tinged by what was lost. That loss defines your culture. You're not merely a hidden people. You're a people haunted by the memory of what you were supposed to become, the perfect elfin race, a people of light, wisdom, and grace. Instead, you became monsters who must steal life to exist. So even amid laughter at festivals, even as dancers swirl through shimmering halls, there's always an edge of sorrow, a hush beneath the music, a silent fear that one day the tides will turn and all of this will vanish. And yet, for all the sorrow, the Idoneth endure. Because hope, for you, is as relentless as the ocean itself. No matter how many raids you conduct, no matter how many secrets you keep, a small part of every Deepkin heart still dreams of a day when you could emerge from the depths unafraid, when you could stand in sunlight without shame, But the mortal realms are rarely so kind, because while your society is held together by secrecy, faith, and fragile beauty, the Idoneth Deepkin are surrounded by enemies who would see them drowned in blood or erased from existence entirely. Start with the most obvious, the Stormcast Eternals. Sigmar's golden warriors are forged from mortal souls, bound into living weapons of divine purpose. To them, souls are sacred. Every soul lost to chaos is a tragedy. Every soul saved is a victory for order. So when the Stormcast learned that the Idoneth were stealing souls from innocent mortals, that revelation hit like a tidal wave. Stormcast champions speak of the Deepkin as hypocrites. How dare these so-called elves of order prey upon the very mortals Sigmar seeks to protect? How dare they cloak themselves in secrecy while slaughtering innocents beneath moonlit waves? The Stormcast have fought alongside the Idoneth in desperate times against chaos hordes, against monstrous beasts threatening coastal cities. Because the Stormcast know, the moment the battle ends, the Idoneth might slip away and raid a nearby village for new souls. Then there's chaos itself. The followers of chaos have a particular hatred for the Idoneth Deepkin, especially Slaaneish's cults. Because the Deepkin are survivors of Slaaneish's hunger, they slip through the Dark Prince's jaws. To Slaaneish's followers, that's an unforgivable insult. Chaos cultists dream of capturing the Idoneth, dragging them back into their god's embrace. They believe that by reclaiming these lost Aelven souls, they'll win greater favor from their Prince of Excess. Some cultists whisper that the taste of an Idoneth soul is sweeter than any mortal's, a delicacy forged from divine magic and cosmic trauma. So wherever chaos spreads, the Idoneth must be vigilant. One cult sighting can lead to weeks of cloak and dagger battles beneath the waves, each side seeking to outwit and destroy the other. And if chaos ever discovered the locations of the hidden Idoneth enclaves, it could spell extinction for your entire race. Then there are other elves. Morathi's daughters of Cain view the Idoneth as rivals and potential tools. Morathi's spies constantly try to infiltrate Idoneth enclaves, hoping to steal secrets about soul magic. Some daughters of Cain see the Deepkin as cousins who've embraced a different path of darkness. Others would happily butcher them for their ether quartz and soul lore. The Lumineth Realm Lords are an even more complicated matter, because your very existence is a living wound to Teclis. Teclis created the Idoneth, and then, horrified by what he saw, tried to erase them. To the Lumineth, the Idoneth are a mistake best left forgotten, a stain upon the perfect elfin ideal. Some among the Lumineth speak of the Deepkin with sorrow, others with disgust, but few truly understand the depths of your suffering. Any alliance between the Lumineth and the Idoneth is fragile at best. Lumineth armies might fight alongside Deepkin if the threat is dire enough. But beneath every polite nod and every graceful gesture lies a simmering distrust. Mortals, meanwhile, know almost nothing about the Idoneth. Those who do know speak of nightmares, figures with luminous eyes emerging from waves, cities emptied overnight, and screams carried on ocean winds. To fishermen and sailors, the Idoneth are phantoms, sea devils, or curses from forgotten gods. And that ignorance is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it protects your people. The less mortals know, the safer you remain. But it also means mortals fear you instinctively. Even if you tried to explain your plight, they brand you monsters. Because how do you justify stealing souls? How do you explain that you have no choice? Among the more cunning enemies are the Skaven. If any race understands secrets, it's the Skaven. They build tunnels beneath oceans, construct devices to sniff out hidden enclaves, and trade in information like it's warpstone dust. A Skaven warlord who discovered the truth about the Idoneth's soul raids would sell that knowledge to the highest bidder, or use it to blackmail your people for endless tribute. There are whispered tales of Skaven breaching undersea enclaves, only to be torn apart by Fangmora eels and crushed under Leviathan shells. But the Skaven are patient, they keep coming back, and then there are the monsters. The Idoneth dwell in the ocean's deepest trenches, in places untouched by sunlight for eons. But they are not alone down there. Colossal sea beasts older than the mortal realms themselves prowl the abyss, leviathans the size of fortresses. Shadowy entities that ripple through the dark, unseen but always watching. Creatures that even the Isharan dare not name. Every Idoneth child grows up with warnings about the abyss, about the monsters who dwell in the black depths, waiting for careless elves to stray too far from the lights of the city. These creatures are neither friend nor enemy. They're a reminder that even the sea has secrets that can't be tamed. So if you're an Idoneth Deepkin, you live in a fortress of coral and magic, but you're surrounded on all sides by enemies. Some seek vengeance for stolen souls, others want your secrets, your technology, your magic. And some simply want you gone because you exist as proof that the Aelven gods are not infallible. And through it all, you fight, you hide, you steal, because survival is your only creed, and the ocean never forgets. So now you know the weight the Idoneth carry. You know their secrets, their wars, their tenuous ties to gods and mortals alike. But even in the darkest depths, there are those who shine like pearls in black water, because the story of the Idoneth Deepkin isn't just about an entire race, it's also about individuals. Figures whose names echo through coral halls, whose deeds shape the fate of enclaves, and whose very existence keeps the Idoneth clinging to hope or sliding deeper into despair. Let's start with perhaps the most famous name in all the Idoneth enclaves, Volturnos, High King of the Deep. Volturnos is the face of the Idoneth. He's the warrior king, the first of his kind, the exemplar of everything the Achilleans aspire to be. Born during the earliest days after Teclis's disastrous creation, Volturnos was one of the few whose soul remained entirely whole. He remembers the pain of Teclis's rejection. He remembers the flight into the deep oceans, but unlike many of his kin, Volturnos was forged by that trauma rather than shattered by it. He rose through the Achillean ranks as a peerless warrior. His blade is said to be as swift as an eel's strike, and his mind as sharp as a Leviathan's jaw. He commands not just through martial prowess, but through sheer presence. When Volturnos enters a chamber, conversations stop, eyes lower. Even the Isharan, who claim mastery over secrets, fall silent in his presence. He rides a Fangmora eel named Uasol, a creature as legendary as its rider. Together, they've led charges that have shattered chaos war hosts, driven back invading armies, and saved entire enclaves from destruction. But Volturnos carries a heavy burden. He knows the truth of his people's plight. He understands that every victory in battle only delays an inevitable reckoning. Some whisper that Volturnos dreams of a day when the Idoneth might stand in the sun again, free from secrecy. Others say he's too pragmatic for such illusions, that he'll do whatever it takes to keep his people hidden, no matter the cost. Then there's Lotan, Warden of the Soul Ledgers. Lotan is an Isharan, one of the keepers of the Deepkin's most closely guarded secrets. His title sounds dry, almost bureaucratic, but don't let that fool you. Lotan is among the most important figures in all Idoneth society. He carries the Soul Ledger, a living record of every soul taken, every Namati sustained, and every mortal life extinguished in the Deepkin's raids. It's said the ledger is etched into a vast slab of shimmering ether quartz, its runes shifting and rearranging with every soul claimed or lost. Lotan is meticulous, cold-eyed. Some call him emotionless, but that's not quite true. He feels deeply, but he's learned to bury those feelings beneath layers of ritual and logic, because someone must keep count. Someone must know precisely how many souls the Idoneth require to survive another season. If Volturnos is the blade of the Deepkin, Lotan is their conscience and their executioner. Beyond these prominent figures, the Idoneth are filled with other legends, soul scryers who navigate impossible currents to guide entire enclaves through oceans few mortals have ever seen. Soul renders who perform delicate rituals to extract souls from the dying without a single drop of blood. Achillean princes and princesses whose tales of courage ripple through the enclaves like songs carried on the tide. Yet among all these names, it's sometimes the Namati who leave the deepest mark. Every so often, a Namati rises beyond the limits set for them. Despite having a borrowed soul, despite knowing their days are numbered, some Namati become heroes. Warriors whose fury burns so brightly it lights the darkest trenches. Martyrs who die defending their enclaves from Skaven incursions or chaos monstrosities. Their names are often whispered rather than sung, because the Idoneth know how fragile hope can be. But their stories matter. They remind even the highest Achilleans that the Namati are more than tools. They are people, each carrying flickers of lives stolen from above the waves. Which brings us to perhaps the most important question of all. What is daily life like when you wake up as an Idoneth Deepkin? Let's say it plainly, it's not all riding eels into battle and harvesting souls beneath storms. If you're born an Achillean, your life is structured, disciplined, and filled with constant training. You wake before the glow globes that illuminate the coral halls have fully brightened. You meditate, reciting ancient Aelven mantras passed down since before the mortal realms even existed. Then you train. Glaive drills, mounted combat exercises on your Fangmora, practicing strikes in currents so swift they'd tear a mortal's limbs from their sockets. Your body must be as much a weapon as your blade. But when training ends, you're free to walk the cities of your enclave, and what cities they are. Underwater avenues lined with coral arches glowing softly in shifting hues, leviatons drifting lazily through wide canals. Schools of tiny fish glittering like scattered stars. Everywhere there's color and movement, the ocean currents weaving through streets and chambers like gentle winds. Shops sell wares carved from pearl or shaped from translucent scales. Isharan artisans craft instruments whose music sounds like the sigh of the tide. Even the markets are silent affairs, with transactions completed through subtle gestures rather than loud bargaining. If you're Isharan, your days are consumed with magic. You spend hours studying soul ledgers, casting divinations into swirling pools of enchanted water, or weaving illusions so perfect they might fool even gods. Yet your work is somber. You are the keepers of truth and of the burden that truth carries. For the Namati, life is much bleaker. You rise when commanded. You work where you're told. You repair coral walls, harvest seaweed, clean leviathan shells, or forge simple weapons. You're watched constantly because the risk of a Namati slipping into a soul-lost stupor is ever present. Namati dwell in separate quarters, often near the city's outermost edges. Their homes are simple compared to the gleaming towers of the Achilleans. And while they're treated with a certain detached pity, there's also a subtle fear in how others approach them, because the Namati are living reminders of the Idoneth's fragility. Yet there are moments of joy, even for them. Festivals held beneath drifting lanterns, silent performances where dancers glide through water, trailing ribbons of bioluminescence. Songs played in haunting minor keys, weaving tales of longing and loss. And everywhere, the sense that beauty is the one thing the Idoneth refuse to surrender. Despite everything, the raids, the secrets, the isolation, the Idoneth create wonders. They craft coral gardens that bloom in impossible shapes. They build statues that seem to ripple like waves when you look at them from different angles. They sing songs whose notes vibrate in the water and linger in the bones. Because as long as the Idoneth can still make beauty, they can still hope. And sometimes, in those quiet moments, even the Namati dare to dream, perhaps of sunlight filtering through water, of open skies, of a day when they won't have to steal souls to survive. But dreams are dangerous in the mortal realms, because dawn always gives way to tide, and for the Idoneth Deepkin, the tide is never far away. So here you are, standing or floating at the edge of your world, looking into the currents of what might come next. Because for the Idoneth Deepkin, the past is a storm of pain and secrets. The present is a razor's edge balanced between survival and annihilation. But the future is an ocean of uncertainty. Let's talk about where things might go for your people. Because the Deepkin may hide in shadows, but time has a way of dragging all secrets into the light. First and foremost, there's Teclis, the creator, the would-be savior, the god who tried to erase you from existence. In the Age of Sigmar, Teclis has grown more powerful than ever. He leads the Lumineth Realm Lords, forging a new golden age for elvenkind, or so he claims. But no matter how high Teclis rises, he can't escape the memory of his first failure, the Idoneth Deepkin. And make no mistake, Teclis has not forgotten you. He knows you're still out there, lurking in the depths. He knows you steal souls to survive. And as his power grows, so too does his determination to correct his past mistakes. Some Isharan scholars whisper that Teclis is already hunting for the enclaves, that he's crafting spells capable of piercing even the most intricate illusions, that one day he'll descend into the seas, armed with the light of Hysh, to finish what he started so long ago. For the Idoneth, Teclis is the living embodiment of your greatest fear, that even the deepest ocean isn't deep enough to hide you. But every cultist who carves runes into flesh, every Sybarite who whispers prayers in velvet shadows, weakens those chains just a little more. If Slaanesh ever breaks free completely, it could mean the end of the Idoneth Deepkin. Because the Idoneth's souls still bear the mark of their time within Slaanesh's belly. They're tainted, fractured. If Slaanesh escaped, he might call those souls back to him, consuming the Deepkin from the inside out. And if that happens, it won't just be the Namati who fade. Entire enclaves could dissolve overnight, cities swallowed by madness, oceans turned into screaming voids of excess and agony, so the Deepkin watch the horizon for signs of the Dark Prince's return. They study omens, read shifting currents, and measure every flicker of chaos magic in the mortal realms. Because for the Idoneth, Slaanesh is not just a god of excess, he's the devourer of everything they are. But there's another possibility. A quieter, more fragile dream. Some among the Deepkin hope for reconciliation. Hope that one day the Idoneth might step into the sunlight again, not as monsters but as a recognized part of the Aelven races, that the Lumineth might forgive them. That the cities of Sigmar might understand the desperate choice between extinction and survival. It's a dangerous hope, because the Idoneth know that to reveal the truth is to risk annihilation. Mortals would never forgive the soul raids, even other elves might declare them abominations. But still, the dream lingers, because your people have endured unimaginable suffering. You've built cities of beauty and wonder, you fought chaos, defended mortal shores, and held the line against nightmares lurking in the trenches. Some believe that must count for something. Perhaps there's a path where the Idoneth can atone. Perhaps they could find new ways to sustain the Namati ways that don't require stolen souls. Perhaps they could share their magic with allies, become guardians of the seas rather than silent predators. But every time such discussions rise in council chambers, they end the same way, with silence. Because no one knows how to escape the chains that bind the Idoneth to their grim reality. And so, for now, the Deepkin remain hidden. Watching, waiting, raiding when they must. Praying that the tides won't shift against them. And yet, in the quietest depths, in the glow of bioluminescent gardens, some Idoneth still dare to imagine a world where they're not monsters, where they can swim free under open skies, where their children are born whole, where no one must die for the Deepkin to live. But until that day comes, life as an Idoneth Deepkin remains what it has always been, a story of sorrow wrapped in silence. So yeah, waking up as an Idoneth Deepkin might not be the majestic undersea adventure you imagined. Turns out, when your entire existence depends on stealing other people's souls, that's a whole new level of nightmare. Thanks for diving into the depths with Realm Lore Mops. For the deep, and for the secrets we wish we didn't have to keep, or maybe not.